That door clicked behind her like a judge's gavel. No exit, no witness, just a woman, a folder, and a truth that had been waiting half a century to bite. Mary Donald sat on that paper-covered table like she was sitting on a confession she didn't commit. 74 years old, hands trembling, knuckles white around a manila folder stamped with the state's name like it owned her. 3 days earlier, that envelope came in the mail, official seal, cold language, consultation. Historical records. The kind of words they use when they don't want you asking what really happened. Mary had waited 54 years for an answer she never knew to question. All she knew was the silence in her house, the empty room that never became a nursery, the holidays that never got loud. Doctors told her some women just can't. She carried that like a personal failure, like God had skipped her line. Now she was here because the state finally decided it was safe to tell the truth. The front desk didn't look up long enough to see the fear. They just pointed her down a hallway like they were sending her to pay a bill. Dr. Sarah Chen was the kind of doctor who didn't waste words. Reproductive health, straight lines, hard facts. When she walked in, she took one look at Mary's face and understood the room had already changed. "Mrs. Donald," she said softly, "you okay?" Mary tried to speak, but it came out thin, like her voice didn't want to be part of what was coming. "They sent me this," she said. "From the state. I don't understand it." What? She pushed the folder forward like it was evidence, like it might burn her if she held it too long. "I never been sick like that. Just one surgery when I was 14. They said it was my appendix." Appendix. That's what they always call it when they don't want you to know they took something you can't replace. Dr. Chen opened the folder. She didn't flip through it like casual paperwork. She read it like a coroner reads a body. Page 1, page 2, page 3. The air got heavier with every second. Mary watched her eyes. That's how you can tell when the truth is ugly. A person's face changes before they ever speak. Dr. Chen exhaled slow, like she was trying to keep her voice steady for both of them. "Mrs. Donald," she said, "I'm sorry. I need you to hear me clearly." What? Mary's stomach tightened. Not from age, not from nerves, from instinct. The same instinct that tells you when you've walked into a trap and the room is too quiet. "That surgery in 1948, Dr. Chen continued, wasn't for appendicitis." Mary blinked, once, twice. Like the words didn't land right, Dr. Chen didn't look away. "They removed your fallopian tubes," she said. "You were sterilized." Silence hit the room like a slap. Mary stared at her, waiting for the punchline that never came. The ceiling tiles, the light above them, the edge of that folder. Everything stayed the same except Mary's life, which suddenly didn't. "That ain't possible," Mary whispered. "I remember being sick. I remember the bed. I remember them putting me under. I remember waking up hurting." "Doctor." Chen nodded like she believed Mary, because she did. "That's how they wrote it," she said, tapping the paper gently. "But the records say something else." Dr. Chen pointed to a date and read it out like a sentence. "May 7th, 1948, she said. "You were admitted to Western State Hospital. You were 14. Mary's eyes narrowed. "Hospital," she repeated. "I wasn't crazy. I wasn't nothing like that." Dr. Chen's voice stayed calm, but her words didn't soften. "It says the admitting reason was moral deficiency." 3 days later, they authorized surgical sterilization. Mary's throat tightened so hard it felt like swallowing glass. "Moral deficiency," she said. "What does that even mean?" "It meant somebody decided they didn't like the way you lived. It meant a clipboard could erase your future. It meant the state had a word for, 'We don't think you deserve a family.'" Dr. Chen turned another page. "This procedure wasn't random," she said. "It was approved by the Virginia State Eugenics Board under the Sterilization Act." Mary heard the word board and felt a chill. Boards don't cry. Boards don't apologize. Boards don't lose sleep. Boards make decisions, then go home and eat dinner. "Why would they do that to me?" Mary asked. Her voice cracked on me, like she still thought the world was supposed to make sense. Dr. Chen held her gaze. "Because the law allowed it," she said, "and because they thought they were allowed to decide who should have children." Mary's eyes went wet, but she didn't cry yet, not yet. Right then she was still trying to negotiate with reality. So they lied, she said. They told my mama it was appendix. They told me it was appendix. Dr. Chen didn't deny it, she didn't dance around it. That's what they did, she said, to reduce resistance. Mary sat back like she'd been shoved. Resistance, like she was an enemy. Like a 14-year-old girl was a problem to be managed, not a child to be protected. Her hands started shaking harder now, and when the tears finally came, they came from deep. The kind that carry decades in them, not pretty tears, not quiet tears. The kind of crying you do when you realize your whole life was built on a lie somebody wrote down and then buried. I tried, she said, the words breaking apart. I tried for years. She swallowed hard. My husband, he wanted a baby so bad. We prayed. We saved money for doctors. They told me it was just infertility. Mary wiped her cheeks, but they wouldn't stay dry. I blamed myself. I thought I was broken. Dr. Chen didn't interrupt. There are moments you don't cut with words. Mary leaned forward, eyes burning now. All that time, she said, all those years, it was them. That them wasn't one doctor. It wasn't one nurse. It wasn't one mistake. It was a system, a machine, a quiet kind of crime where nobody has to hold you down because the paper does the holding. Dr. Chen lowered her voice like the walls could hear. The state has been sending letters, she said. They're trying to notify survivors. Survivors, Mary repeated. Like she'd lived through a war she never knew she was in. Mary looked at the folder again like it had teeth, and something in her face changed, anger finding its way through the grief. So what do I do now? She asked. Who do I go to? Who pays for 54 years? Dr. Chen hesitated, not because she didn't care, because she knew the answer was ugly too. Most of the people involved are gone, she said, and it was legal then. Legal, that's the slickest word criminals ever invented. It doesn't mean right, it just means protected. Mary stopped crying, not because she felt better, because something colder replaced it. She reached for the folder, finally ready to open what she couldn't face before. Her fingers slid through the pages like she was searching for a name, a signature, something she could hold responsible. And that's when she found it. A report, a follow-up note. The kind of thing nobody writes unless they're proud of how clean the lie went. It said in plain language that the cover story worked, that the girl had no awareness, that she still talked about wanting children one day. Mary's breath caught, because that meant they didn't just steal her future. They watched her dream about it afterward and wrote it down. She looked up at Dr. Chen, eyes wide, voice suddenly steady. They knew, she said. They knew I wanted kids. Dr. Chen didn't answer fast enough, and right then Mary's phone vibrated in her coat pocket. One call, unknown number. She stared at it like it was a warning, because the state doesn't send letters like that unless somebody decided it was time. And if it's time to tell you the truth, it's also time to control what you do with it. Mary let that phone buzz until it stopped. Not because she was scared, because she was thinking. That's the difference between panic and power. Panic answers everything, power listens first. The screen went dark again. Unknown number, no message. Just a reminder that somebody still cared what Mary did with that folder. She slid the papers back into place, slow and careful, like putting a blade back in its sheath. Dr. Chen tried to speak, but Mary held up one hand. Don't, Mary said, quiet, firm. Just tell me what you see. Dr. Chen looked at her like she wasn't seeing a patient anymore. She was seeing a woman who'd been robbed and just realized the thief left fingerprints. This file, Dr. Chen said, doesn't read like a medical chart. It reads like a decision. Mary nodded once. A decision about what? She asked, even though she already knew. About who gets to be a mother, Dr. Chen said. Mary stared past her like she could see the people who signed those pages sitting in a room somewhere, counting lives like numbers on a ledger. So why send the letter now? Mary asked. Why wake the dead? Dr. Chen didn't have a clean answer because there wasn't one. States don't confess because they grow a conscience. They confess because someone is forcing their hand. Mary reached for her coat, the folder tucked under her arm like a weapon. "I need names," she said. "I need to know who opened the door to this." Dr. Chen hesitated. Then she turned the folder back around, tapped a section. "It starts with a law," she said, "and a board, and a court that decided this was acceptable." Mary's eyes locked in. "A court," she repeated. Dr. Chen nodded. "There was a case," she said. "They used a young woman as proof. They made it a precedent." Mary's lips pressed together. Precedent. Another smooth word. Like the first crime gives permission for the rest. Mary didn't say anything for a moment. Then she asked the question that matters. What was her name? Dr. Chen paused, like she hated speaking it out loud because the name wasn't just history. It was a key. "Carrie Buck," she said. Mary rolled that name on her tongue, tasting it like a warning. Carrie Buck. And just like that, the room wasn't only about Mary anymore. It was about a pattern, a long one, the kind built by people who wear clean clothes and never touch the mess they make. Mary sat back down, but different this time, not confused, not pleading, listening. Dr. Chen kept her voice low, like she didn't want the building to learn what they were discussing. "Carrie was a teenager," she said. 17. She had a baby. The people responsible for her turned on her." Mary's eyes narrowed. "Why?" she asked. "Because the truth was inconvenient," Dr. Chen said, "and blaming her was easier than exposing what happened to her." Mary leaned forward. That's when you could feel the chessboard coming into view. Because this wasn't medicine. This was protection, a family protecting itself, a system protecting itself, and a girl getting sacrificed to keep the story clean. Dr. Chen explained it in pieces, the way you tell someone about a crime you don't want to relive. Carrie wasn't some wild monster. She wasn't some defective thing begging to be controlled. She was a girl who'd been violated, then boxed in, then labeled, then filed away like a problem. And once they had her behind institutional walls, the state didn't see a person. They saw a test run, a trial balloon, a demonstration. Mary's fingers tightened around the folder. "So they picked her," Mary said, "on purpose." Dr. Chen nodded. "They needed a case that would hold up," she said. "Someone without money, without protection. Someone easy to describe, however they wanted." Mary gave a slow, bitter smile. "That's the kind the state loves," she said. "The kind nobody comes looking for." Dr. Chen didn't argue. "They did the procedure," she said, and told her it was something else. Mary let out a laugh that didn't have humor in it. "Same play," she muttered, "different girl." And that's when Dr. Chen said the part that made Mary's eyes harden. "It went to the Supreme Court," she said. Mary didn't blink. "And they approved it," Dr. Chen continued. "They ruled that the state could do it." Mary's jaw tightened like a lock. "So the highest people," she said, "signed off on cutting girls open." Dr. Chen didn't correct her, because that's what it was, a permission slip for theft. Mary sat there silent, but you could see it. She wasn't hearing about Carrie Buck like a stranger. She was hearing the blueprint of what happened to her. Same lie, same deception, same kind of people behind it. And once the blueprint existed, you can build a whole neighborhood of crimes from it. Dr. Chen kept going. "It didn't stop with Carrie," she said. "It spread." Mary stared at the folder again. "How far?" she asked. Dr. Chen hesitated, then told her. "Thousands," she said, "in this state alone, over decades." Mary's throat worked as she swallowed the rage. "So I wasn't a mistake," she said. "No," Dr. Chen replied. "You were a number." Mary sat back slowly, like she was trying not to break the table in half with her hands. She whispered, almost to herself, "They wrote a report saying I didn't know." Dr. Chen nodded. Mary's eyes lifted. "That means somebody watched me," Mary said. "They watched my life after. They checked if the lie held." Dr. Chen didn't deny it. And right then, Mary understood something that made her stop feeling old. Because age doesn't matter when you realize you've been hunted. "You know what the worst part is?" Mary said, voice steady now. "It wasn't the cutting." Dr. Chen waited. Mary leaned in. "It was the confidence," she said. The way they wrote it down like they'd done something smart, like they'd solved a problem. Dr. Chen's face didn't move, but her eyes dropped for a second. Mary stood up again. "I'm not leaving this in a folder," she said. "I'm not taking this home and dying quiet with it." Dr. Chen started to speak: caution, procedure, lawsuits, limits. Mary shook her head. "Don't tell me what they won't let me do," she said. "Tell me who still benefits if I stay silent." That question hung in the air, because the moment you start talking, you don't just embarrass a state. You threaten people's careers, reputations, legacies. You put a light on names that families have kept polished for generations. Mary tucked the folder into her coat like she was carrying proof. Then her phone buzzed again. Same unknown number, but this time it wasn't a call. It was a text, 8 words. "Stop digging. That surgery saved your family." Mary stared at the screen, frozen. Saved your family. That wasn't an apology. That wasn't that was somebody reminding her they still believed the lie. And they still felt entitled to what they stole. And Mary realized, right there in that sterile clinic room, the people who did this might be dead, but the people who protected it were still breathing. Mary didn't delete the message, didn't reply, didn't let her hands shake this time. She slipped the phone back into her coat like she'd just been handed a threat in broad daylight, because that's what it was. Not loud, not dramatic, clean, confident. Written by someone who believed the past still belonged to them. Saved your family. That wasn't about concern. That was about control. Mary walked out of the clinic without saying goodbye. No tears now, no confusion. Just a woman moving with purpose for the first time in decades. Outside, the air felt different, not lighter, sharper. Like once you see the outline of the trap, every street starts looking narrower. She didn't go home. People who know the game never bring danger back to their front door. She went to the public records office instead, because lies don't live forever. They just hide behind filing cabinets and polite language. Mary signed in with her real name. No disguise, no hesitation. If someone was watching, she wanted them to see she wasn't sneaking. The clerk barely looked up. Another day, another request. That's how systems survive, everyone only doing their piece. "I'm requesting archived medical and institutional records," Mary said. Her voice didn't tremble. "Western State Hospital, late 40s. The clerk paused, just long enough. "Those files are sealed," she said. Mary nodded. She expected that. "So were my fallopian tubes," Mary replied. "Didn't stop them." The clerk looked up now. Mary slid the state letter across the counter, the one with the seal, the one that said the quiet part out loud. The clerk's expression changed, not shock, recognition. "I'll see what I can do," she said. "That's how you know the truth already leaked somewhere. When gatekeepers stop pretending they don't know." Mary waited, minutes stretched. She counted footsteps, watched reflections in the glass. Power doesn't rush. It lets other people make mistakes. The clerk came back with a thin stack of photocopies. Not everything, but enough to confirm something worse. Names, committees. Signatures that showed up again and again like recurring characters in a bad story. Mary traced one name with her finger. Not a doctor, not a nurse. A social worker. She frowned. Social workers knock on doors. They don't wear gloves. They earn trust. Mary remembered a woman from her childhood. Clipboard, polite smile, standing in the doorway while her mother wiped flour from her hands. She felt something cold slide into place. This wasn't just hospitals. This was homes. Mary gathered the papers and left before anyone could second-guess helping her. That night, she sat in a rented room with the documents spread out like a map. She didn't read fast. She read like a survivor. Every phrase told the same story in different handwriting. Moral risk. Preventative measure. Adjustment satisfactory. They didn't talk about children. They talked about outcomes. And buried deep in the stack she found the follow-up report. The one that made her chest tighten all over again. 6 months after the surgery, a visit, an evaluation. She expresses desire for children in the future. Mary stared at that line until it blurred. They knew. They checked. They confirmed the lie was holding, and then they moved on. Her phone vibrated again. Same number, another text. "You're reopening old wounds. Let the past rest." Mary laughed out loud this time. Not because it was funny, because it was familiar. That's what men say when they're afraid of what you remember. Mary typed back one sentence. The first message she'd sent in over 50 years about what happened to her. "You don't get to tell me when my life ends." She didn't wait for a response. Instead, she made a call. A reporter, local, hungry, the kind who still believed stories mattered. "I have documents," Mary said when he answered. "State documents, names, dates, lies." There was a pause on the other end. "About what?" he asked. Mary looked at the papers again. "About a crime that never needed a mask," she said. "One that hid in hospitals and called itself help." Another pause, longer this time. "When can we meet?" he asked. Mary smiled, thin and dangerous. "Tomorrow," she said, "before someone decides I shouldn't." She hung up and sat back on the bed. For the first time since she was 14, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt loaded. Because once you tell the truth out loud, you don't control where it lands. And somewhere, someone who sent that text was realizing the math had changed. Mary wasn't alone anymore. And that's when people who built their power in the dark start making reckless moves. Outside, tires slowed on the street below, too slow, then stopped. Mary didn't move. She already knew. When a system realizes a witness won't stay buried, it doesn't ask nicely. It sends someone to see how serious you really are. Mary didn't look out the window. That's how panic gets you killed. She stayed seated, breathing slow, listening. Engines talk if you let them, doors too. A car door closed outside, not slammed, controlled. Footsteps followed, one set, then another. Not neighbors, not lost. She checked the lock on the room with her eyes, not her hands. Hands give you away. A knock came, not hard, not polite, measured. Mary stood, moved to the side of the door. She de-learned something late in life, but she learned it clean. People who knock like that already believe they're welcome. "Mrs. Donald," a man's voice said, calm, "we just want to talk." Mary smiled to herself. That line has buried more truths than shovels ever did. She didn't answer. Another knock, same rhythm. "You're stirring up confusion," the man continued. "We can clear things up." Clear, that's what they call erasing. Mary stepped closer, just enough to let her voice carry through the door. "You already had 54 years, she said. "What more do you need?" Silence, then a softer tone, friendly, almost kind. "You don't understand how this works," the man said. "Some things were done to protect families, communities." Mary closed her eyes for half a second. "Saved your family, same language, different mouth. So that was you," she asked. "Or are you just holding the story for someone else?" Another pause. Power hates being named. "Open the door," the man said, not asking now. Mary leaned her forehead lightly against the wood. "You know what scares you," she said. "It ain't me." No answer. "It's the paper," she continued. "Ink lasts longer than people." The knob turned once, tested, locked. Mary stepped back, heart steady. "You don't want to do this," the man said. "Once it's public, nobody wins." Mary laughed quietly. "That's the lie you all believe," she said. That winning was ever the point. Footsteps shifted, a whisper between the two outside, decision-making time. Then the man spoke again, voice sharper. "If you go to the press," he said, "you're going to hurt a lot of innocent people." Mary's face hardened. "You mean the ones who benefited," she said, "or the ones you never told?" The answer came in the form of a final knock, harder this time. "We'll be in touch," the man said. "Think carefully." Footsteps retreated. Car doors opened, closed, engine pulled away. Mary waited a full minute after the sound disappeared, then another. Only then did she move. She gathered the papers, slid them into her bag, and sat back down. Hands shaking now, but that was fine. Fear shows up when it's late. Her phone buzzed. A new message. Different number. "You're not the only one." Mary stared at the screen, then another message followed. "There are others like you. We've been waiting." She exhaled, long and slow. That's how movements start, not with speeches, with recognition. She typed back one word. "Where?" The reply came fast. Charlottesville, tomorrow morning, don't come alone. Mary set the phone down. Outside, the night returned to normal, too normal. She knew better now. When the hunters back off, it's not mercy, it's regrouping. And whatever she was walking into next was bigger than one woman, one surgery, one lie. Because once the quiet ones find each other, the people who built their power in silence lose control of the noise. Charlottesville didn't feel like a meeting place. It felt like a confession booth with better manners. Mary arrived early. That's how you keep control. You see the room before it sees you. The cafe sat on a quiet corner, too clean, too ordinary. Places like that are perfect for secrets. Nobody listens when the coffee's good. She chose a table with her back to the wall, old habit. You don't survive this long without learning where danger enters. The folder stayed in her bag, not out, not hidden, accessible. The door opened. A woman walked in first, late 60s, sharp eyes. She scanned the room like someone who'd been burned before. She didn't smile. She nodded, that was enough. Then another, younger, nervous hands, then another, and another. By the time the door stopped opening, 7 women sat at scattered tables, separate orders, separate lives, same scar. No one announced anything, no introductions, just looks that said, you too. Mary stood last, not because she was in charge. Because she was ready, she didn't raise her voice. I got a letter, she said, from the state. Every head turned. They told me the truth after half a century, she continued. Then they told me to stop asking questions. A woman near the window laughed once, dry. They told me I was lucky, she said I wouldn't have mouths to feed. Another leaned forward. They said it was for my protection. Another whispered, they never told me anything. Mary listened. That's how you build something real. You let the truth stack itself. One woman slid a copy of her records across the table. Another followed, then another. Different years. Different hospitals, same language. Mary felt it then, not grief, not even rage, pattern. They weren't improvising, Mary said. They were running a system. Heads nodded, slow, certain. A man approached the table, mid-40s, notebook, no badge, the reporter. He stopped short when he saw how many women were there. Mary met his eyes. You ready? She asked. He swallowed. Yes, he said, but once this runs. Mary cut him off. It won't belong to you anymore, she said, or me. She looked around the room. It'll belong to everyone they thought wouldn't talk. The reporter opened his notebook, and somewhere far from that cafe, a phone rang unanswered. Because the people who believed this story would stay buried were realizing the ground was moving. And when buried truths start pushing up together, the ones who covered them don't try to explain. They try to stop the next chapter before it gets written. The story broke 3 days later, not with fireworks, with names. That's what shook the walls, not emotion, not outrage. Paper trails, dates, committees, signatures, men and women who'd built clean careers on dirty decisions. Mary read the article alone, early morning light cutting across the table. She didn't smile, she didn't cry, she checked what mattered. They printed the memo. The one that said the lie worked. By noon, the phone started ringing. Some calls came soft, advocacy groups, lawyers who finally smelled blood, people who said, we believe you, like it was a new invention. Other calls came sharp. A man claiming to represent concerned parties. A woman asking if Mary understood the consequences of misinterpretation. A voice that said nothing at all and hung up when she answered. That last one stayed with her. By evening, the state issued a statement. Regret, context, standards of the time, the usual dance. Mary watched it on mute, because when institutions apologize without naming the crime, they're not sorry, they're negotiating. That night, another message came. Unknown number, different tone. We can offer compensation, quietly. Mary stared at it for a long time. Compensation. That's what they call hush money when they want to sound humane. She typed back one sentence. Put it on record. No response. The next morning, the reporter called. They're scrambling, he said. Files are disappearing. Offices denying access. Mary closed her eyes. Of course they are, she said. That's step 2. What's step 3? He asked. Mary didn't answer right away, because step 3 is where people get hurt. That afternoon, one of the women from the cafe, Elaine, called. They're saying we're confused, Elaine said, that we misunderstood our surgeries. Mary's jaw tightened. Confusion doesn't come with identical paperwork, she said. They're pushing for a closed-door settlement, Elaine continued. One check, one signature, no admissions. Mary walked to the window, watching people pass like nothing had changed. They want this to end, Mary said. Yes, Elaine replied, before it spreads. Mary lowered her voice. Then we don't let it end, she said. We let it multiply. Silence on the line. You sure you're ready for that? Elaine asked. Mary thought about the knock on the door, the text messages, the way men spoke when they believed time was on their side. I was ready when they cut me open, Mary said. I just didn't know it yet. That night Mary mailed copies of her records to 3 places: a civil rights archive, a university law center, and a federal oversight office that hated state secrets. You don't threaten power by shouting. You threaten it by making yourself impossible to erase. 2 days later, a former hospital administrator went on record, anonymous, of course, but he confirmed the system, the cover stories, the quotas nobody called quotas, and once one person breaks, others follow. The state announced a review, then a task force, then a promise. Mary knew better. Reviews are designed to slow the clock, and the clock was their last defense. At a press conference, a state official said the words they'd practiced all week. We acknowledge pain, he said, but we must move forward. Mary watched from her chair, hands folded. Forward meant past her, past the women who died not knowing, past the children that never existed. She picked up the phone and dialed Elaine. They're stalling, Elaine said. What now? Mary looked at the folder, the copies, the names that hadn't been printed yet. Now, Mary said, we go higher. Elaine exhaled. You mean? Mary didn't finish the sentence. Some doors only open when you knock with enough weight behind you. And the highest doors don't like being reminded that they signed something decades ago and never bothered to clean the blood off the ink. Mary hung up. Outside, sirens wailed somewhere in the distance, unrelated, or maybe not, because when truth starts climbing levels it was never meant to reach, somebody always tries to pull the ladder away. The letter didn't come by email. It came heavy, certified, signature required. That's how you know it matters. Mary held it for a long time before opening it, not because she was afraid, because she understood leverage when she felt it. Inside was a formal invitation, polite words, careful spacing, a request for testimony, not in court, not yet, a private hearing, federal building, closed room. They wanted her contained. Mary smiled. She called Elaine first. They want to hear me, Mary said. Elaine snorted. They want to manage you. Same difference, Mary replied. I'm going. Elaine went quiet. You don't go alone, she said. Mary already knew that. The room was smaller than Mary expected. No flags, no cameras, just a long table, 3 officials, and a recorder that blinked red like an unblinking eye. They asked her to raise her right hand. She did, not because she respected the ritual, because she knew oaths cut both ways. They started gentle, dates, names, confirmation. Mary answered clean, precise. No emotion, no drift. Then they tried to redirect. Mrs. Donald, one of them said, we understand these procedures were traumatic, but at the time. Mary leaned forward. Don't explain it, she said, calm. Ask your question. The room shifted. The man cleared his throat. Do you believe there was intent to deceive? Mary didn't hesitate. Yes, she said, and I have documentation proving it. She slid copies across the table, the memo, the follow-up report. The red light blinked. Another official adjusted her glasses. Are you aware, she asked, that revisiting this could have wide implications? Mary met her gaze. So did cutting children open, she said. You didn't stop then. Silence. That's the sound power makes when it realizes the script isn't working. They ended early, too early. Outside, a man waited by the elevator, suit, no badge, familiar calm. "Mrs. Donald," he said, "may I?" Mary didn't stop walking. "You already did," she replied. He kept pace. "You've made your point," he said. "There are discussions happening, real ones." Mary pressed the button. "Discussions don't undo theft," she said. The elevator dinged. Doors opened. He lowered his voice. "There are people who won't forgive this," he said. "Careers, institutions." Mary turned to him for the first time. "Then they should have thought about that in 1948, she said. The doors closed between them. That night, Elaine called again. "They're nervous," she said. "I can hear it." Mary looked at the city lights from her window. "They should be," she replied. "They built something they can't dismantle quietly." Another call came through, different voice, older, careful. "We'd like to discuss a broader settlement," the voice said. "Public acknowledgement, compensation." What? Mary closed her eyes. "How public?" she asked, a pause. "That's negotiable." Mary ended the call. She knew what came next. When negotiation fails, pressure follows. And pressure doesn't always come from the top. Sometimes it comes from people who think they're protecting history. By making sure witnesses don't live long enough to finish their sentences. Mary placed the folder back in her bag. Tomorrow she was scheduled to speak again. Bigger room, more eyes, and somewhere between now and then, someone would decide whether letting her talk was more dangerous than stopping her. The clock was moving, and Mary knew one thing for sure. When institutions feel cornered, they don't confess, they strike. Mary didn't sleep, not from fear, from calculation. You can feel it when the air changes. Phones ring less. Emails get shorter. People stop saying your name out loud. That's when decisions are being made without you in the room. She dressed before sunrise, plain coat, flat shoes, nothing that slowed her down, nothing that stood out. Elaine called while Mary was pouring coffee. "They moved the time," Elaine said. 2 hours earlier." Mary paused. "Who told you?" she asked. "A staffer who wasn't supposed to," Elaine replied. "He said it like a favor." Mary nodded to herself. That wasn't a favor. That was a warning wrapped in politeness. She didn't argue, didn't complain. She adjusted. Mary left the apartment through the side exit, not because she expected trouble, because she respected patterns. A black sedan idled across the street. Engine on. Windows tinted. Could have been anyone, could have been nobody. Mary walked anyway. Inside the building, security was tighter than scheduled. Too tight, extra uniforms, extra eyes. The kind of setup meant to make you feel small before you speak. Mary signed in, sat down, waited. The room filled slowly, advocates, journalists. A few officials who wouldn't meet her eyes. The chairwoman tapped the microphone. "We're here to hear testimony," she said. "Please keep remarks concise." Concise. That's how they like their accountability, small enough to manage. Mary stood when called. She didn't bring notes. She didn't need them. "My name is Mary Donald," she began. "I was 14 when the state decided I shouldn't be a mother." No tremor, no pause. She told them about the surgery, the lie, the years of blame. She told them about the memo, the follow-up visit, the sentence that proved intent. The room went still. Mary looked up, eyes steady. "You didn't just take bodies," she said. "You took futures, quietly, efficiently." A man in the back shifted. Someone coughed. Mary leaned into the microphone. "And you're still protecting it," she said, "by calling this history." That's when it happened. The fire alarm screamed. Red lights flashed. Doors opened automatically. Chaos bloomed on cue. Security rushed in, shouting instructions. People stood, papers scattered. Mary didn't move. She watched the exits. Because real emergencies don't arrive right on time. Elaine's voice cut through the noise. "Mary." Mary reached for her bag. Inside was the folder and a flash drive. Copies of everything. She slipped it into Elaine's hand without looking. "Get it out," Mary said quietly. Elaine's eyes widened. "What about you?" Mary straightened. "I'm not the evidence," she said. "I'm the witness." Security ushered people toward the exits. The black sedan was gone. Too clean, too fast. Mary stepped into the hallway, heart steady, senses sharp, because if someone pulled the alarm to stop her testimony, it meant they were running out of options. And when people run out of options, they stop caring who gets hurt. Mary walked forward anyway, because once you've been cut open without consent, there isn't much left they can threaten to take, and somewhere just out of sight, someone was realizing they failed to keep the past quiet, which meant the next move wouldn't be paperwork, it would be personal. They called it a malfunction. That's what the spokesperson said before lunch. Wires crossed, old building, unfortunate timing. Mary watched it on a small TV in a diner 2 blocks away, coffee cooling untouched. She didn't flinch. Malfunctions don't wait until the truth hits a microphone. Elaine slid into the booth across from her, breath still uneven. "It's out," Elaine said. "The drive's safe, 3 copies already." Mary nodded once. "Good," she said. "That buys us time." Elaine studied her face. "You okay?" she asked. Mary looked down at her hands, still steady. "I've lived through worse than inconvenience," she said. The waitress refilled their cups without asking. Didn't recognize them, didn't care. That's how history hides, in plain sight. Mary's phone buzzed. This time it wasn't unknown. A blocked number, voice only. She answered. "You should leave town," a man said. No greeting, no threat in his tone, just certainty. Mary didn't speak. "We can make this go away," he continued. "But not if you keep pushing." Mary smiled, though no one could see it. "You already tried going away," she said. "Didn't work." A pause, short, tight. "You're not thinking clearly," the man said. "You're tired, emotional." Mary leaned back. "You don't get to diagnose me," she said. "Your people already tried that." Silence stretched, then quieter. "You don't know who you're fighting." Mary's voice dropped. "I do," she said. "I've been fighting you since I was 14. I just didn't have your name yet." The line went dead. Elaine exhaled. That sounded serious. Mary folded her hands. "It sounded desperate," she replied. Outside, a police cruiser rolled past slow. Not for them, maybe, but Mary noticed anyway, because when pressure rises, allies appear late and enemies move early. That evening, a second story dropped. Then a third, other women, other states, same language, same lies. The pattern was undeniable now. The state announced a preliminary compensation plan. Numbers floated, conditions attached. Mary read the fine print, confidentiality. No admission of wrongdoing, no future claims. "They want us quiet," Elaine said over the phone. Mary's voice was calm. "They want control," she said. "Quiet is just the byproduct." A knock came at Mary's door. Soft, careful, she didn't open it. "Who is it?" she asked. "Building management," a voice replied, too quick. Mary moved to the side again. "Come back tomorrow," she said. "Office hours." Reply, footsteps retreated. Mary checked the hallway camera feed on the old monitor by the door. Static. Then black. She didn't panic. She packed a bag instead. Documents, clothes, the things that mattered. Because when systems fail, they don't admit it. They isolate the problem. Mary slipped out through the fire stairs and didn't look back. She had one more meeting tomorrow, bigger than the last, harder to interrupt. And she knew something else now. They weren't trying to scare her into silence anymore. They were trying to move her off the board. But Mary had already made her move. And once a witness refuses to disappear, the only thing left is to decide how loud the truth is going to land. Mary took the long way. No taxis, no rides, just buses, transfers, and walking stretches where faces blur together and nobody remembers you twice. That's how you stay alive when the board gets crowded. The next meeting wasn't in a government building, too predictable. It was in a church basement that smelled like old wood and stronger memories. Folding chairs, weak coffee, a cross on the wall that had heard worse confessions than this. Mary arrived last. On purpose. The room went quiet when she stepped in, not reverent, respectful. These weren't officials. These were survivors, advocates, lawyers who didn't scare easy. Elaine stood near the front. Gave Mary a look that said, "We're past the point of safety now." Mary nodded. She took her seat, placed the folder on the table in front of her, and waited. The meeting started with logistics, then strategy, then the question nobody wanted to ask. What happens if they shut this down? Someone said. Mary spoke before anyone else could soften it. They already tried, she said. That's how I know we're close. Heads turned. They don't pull alarms unless they're afraid, she continued. They don't send messengers unless the paperwork isn't working anymore. A lawyer cleared his throat. There's talk, he said, about invoking national security concerns, about limiting testimony. Mary smiled thin. Funny, she said. They didn't worry about security when they were cutting children open. The room tightened. That's when the door creaked, just a little. Everyone froze. A man stepped inside, late 50s, well-dressed, no badge, no smile. I'm not here to interrupt, he said, just to listen. Mary didn't look at him right away. You're already interrupting, she said. The man raised his hand slightly. I represent people who want this handled responsibly, he said. Mary finally met his eyes. Responsibly for who? She asked. The man hesitated too long. Mary stood. You don't belong in this room, she said, and you know it. The man's jaw tightened. You're making this bigger than it needs to be, he said. Mary stepped closer. No, she said. You're realizing how small you made it. Silence. The man backed toward the door. We'll be in touch, he said. Mary didn't respond. When the door closed, Elaine exhaled hard. That was bold, she said. Mary picked up her folder. That was a test, she replied, and he failed. The meeting ended shortly after, plans set, dates chosen, names assigned to speak where names hadn't been spoken before. Mary left with 2 escorts, not security, witnesses. Outside, the night air felt charged, like something had snapped loose. Her phone buzzed. One message, no number. You've crossed the line. Mary typed back without slowing her steps. You drew it. She slipped the phone away. Tomorrow she would speak again. This time nationally. And somewhere, someone was deciding whether letting her reach that microphone was worth the fallout, or whether stopping her now would finally be cheaper. Because when truth gets this close to daylight, the last move is always the ugliest, and Mary could feel it coming. Morning came wrong, too quiet. No calls, no warnings, no last-minute cancellations. That's how Mary knew something was off. When pressure disappears all at once, it doesn't mean you're safe. It means the decision's already been made. She dressed slow. Same plain coat, same flat shoes. Nothing that said important, everything that said still here. Elaine met her downstairs. You feel it too? Elaine asked. Mary nodded. They stopped negotiating, Mary said. That's never good news. The drive to the studio took longer than expected. Not traffic, detours, construction signs that weren't there yesterday, streets blocked for reasons nobody could explain. Mary watched it all without comment. Halfway there, Elaine's phone rang. She listened, went pale. What? Elaine said when. She hung up and looked at Mary. They're saying the segment might be postponed, she said. Technical issues. Mary smiled, small and knowing. Same song, she said. Different room. They arrived anyway. The building buzzed with motion that didn't include them. Staff walking fast, eyes sliding away. Too many whispered conversations. A producer finally approached. Mary, he said, forcing warmth. We might need to adjust today's format. Mary didn't sit. Say it straight, she replied. He swallowed. There have been concerns raised, he said. Legal concerns. Mary leaned in slightly. By who? She asked. The producer hesitated. That's complicated. Mary nodded. It always is when the truth starts naming names. The producer lowered his voice. If you proceed, he said, this could get messy. Mary met his eyes. It already is, she said. I just didn't make it that way. A staffer rushed over, whispered in the producer's ear. His face drained. 5 minutes, he said. We're live in 5. Elaine grabbed Mary's hand. You ready? Mary thought about the knock, the texts, the fire alarm. She thought about the girls who never got letters, the women who died blaming themselves. I've been ready longer than they know, she said. They moved toward the studio. And that's when Mary saw him standing near the control room, same suit, same calm, the man from the elevator. He didn't approach, didn't threaten, he just watched. Mary understood immediately. This wasn't about stopping her from speaking. It was about what came after she did. Because once the words go out, there's no pulling them back. Mary adjusted the microphone clip to her coat. The red light above the camera flickered on. Live. And somewhere behind that glass, someone who'd signed papers decades ago was realizing that history was about to say their name out loud. For the first time, the red light stayed solid. No flicker, no interruption. That was the surprise. Mary took a breath, not for courage, but for timing. You don't rush a moment like this. You let it lean toward you. "My name is Mary Donald," she said into the lens. "And for most of my life I thought I was the problem." The room behind the glass froze. Mary didn't look at the man in the suit, didn't look at the producer. She spoke to the people who'd never been in the room when decisions were made. "I was 14 years old when doctors told me I needed surgery," she continued. "They told my family it was routine. They told me it would help me." She paused just long enough. "They lied." A murmur rippled through the studio. "They sterilized me," Mary said, "and they wrote down that the lie worked." The words landed clean. No anger, no theatrics. Truth doesn't need decoration. "For 54 years I blamed myself for not having children," she said. "Doctors looked at my records. They knew. They said nothing." The producer's hand hovered over a control panel, didn't move. Mary leaned forward. "This wasn't a mistake," she said. "It was policy." That's when the phone lines lit up. The host glanced at the screen, startled. We're getting a lot of responses," he said. Mary nodded once. "Of course you are," she said. "There are thousands like me." She named the hospital, she named the board, she named the year. And then she did something they didn't expect. She stopped talking about herself. "There's a woman in North Carolina who was sterilized after giving birth at 14, Mary said. "There are women in California who were told they had too many children. There are women who never got letters, never got answers." The man in the suit shifted for the first time. Mary felt it without looking. "And the ruling that allowed this," she said, voice steady, "was never overturned." That sentence hit harder than any accusation, because it wasn't past tense. The host swallowed. "You're saying this is still legally possible?" he asked. Mary turned to him. "I'm saying the door was never locked," she replied. "They just stopped walking through it openly." Silence. Then the feed cut. Not clean, not official, static, a scrambling screen. Someone had finally pulled the cord, but it was too late. Clips were already spreading, screenshots, recordings, mirrors. Mary removed the microphone. The producer looked pale. "They forced the cut," he said. Mary picked up her bag. "They always do," she replied. "When they're late." Security approached, not aggressive, nervous. "We need to escort you out," one said. Mary nodded. As she passed the control room, she finally looked at the man in the suit. He didn't smile now. "This won't end the way you think," he said quietly. Mary stopped. "You're right," she said. "It won't end for me." She leaned closer. "It ends for you." She walked away before he could answer. Outside, the city kept moving. Cars, sirens, people late for lunch. But somewhere inside the system, something had cracked. Because once a witness speaks on record, and the record escapes the room, the game changes, and the people who relied on silence start making mistakes. They can't walk back. Mary's phone buzzed. Hundreds of messages, some gratitude, some rage. One stood out. "No more warnings." Mary looked up at the sky. Good, because the warnings were over. And whatever came next was going to decide whether the truth stayed standing, or whether someone decided she shouldn't be around to finish the story. The first mistake came that night. Not loud, not violent, careless. Mary was staying somewhere she didn't tell anyone about. No address shared. No routine repeated. That's how you live when silence has enemies. She was reading messages when one stopped her cold. A photo, grainy, taken from across the street. Her leaving the studio, coat on, bag in hand, time stamped. 5 minutes after the broadcast. Mary didn't feel fear. She felt confirmation. Someone wanted her to know she was still being watched. She forwarded it to Elaine with one word: proof. Elaine called immediately. "This is escalation," Elaine said. Mary looked at the photo again. "No," she replied, "this is sloppiness." "What do you mean?" Mary zoomed in, reflections in a window, a license plate fragment, a bad-shaped glare on a windshield. "They're rushing," Mary said, "which means somebody panicked." Elaine exhaled, and panicked people make bad choices. Exactly. The next morning, a former aide contacted a journalist. Then another. Emails leaked, meeting notes, language that sounded eerily familiar. Risk management, damage containment, narrative control, the same instincts, different decade. Mary watched it unfold from a distance. She didn't comment, didn't react, because when predators smell blood, you don't thrash, you let them reveal themselves. By afternoon, a senator issued a statement. Careful, too careful. Mary read it once, then twice. He denied knowledge but not authority, regret but no responsibility. She picked up the phone and called Elaine. "That's our man," Mary said. "You're sure?" Elaine asked. Mary tapped the screen. "He didn't deny the practice," she said. "He denied the timing." That night the photo leaked online. Someone thought it would intimidate her. Instead, it lit a fuse. Civil rights groups demanded protection. Journalists demanded explanations. And the question started spreading. If they're watching her now, who were they watching back then? Mary sat in the quiet, folder open, phone silent for once. She knew what came next, when exposure doesn't stop someone. You don't threaten them, you remove them. Mary closed the folder and stood. Tomorrow she would travel again. Another appearance, another microphone, and somewhere someone was deciding whether this problem was still manageable. Mary changed plans an hour before dawn, not because she was scared, because predictability is a favor you don't give when people are counting your steps. She left through a service hallway, rode with a driver who asked no questions, and switched cars once quiet, clean, forgettable. The kind of movement that looks like nothing to anyone who isn't looking hard. The next microphone waited in a university auditorium. Public, packed, too many witnesses to get clever. Mary liked that. Backstage, a young assistant offered water with shaking hands. "They moved the cameras," he whispered. "Security, too." Mary took the bottle, didn't drink. "Who told you to move them?" she asked. He hesitated, then said a name he shouldn't have known. Mary nodded, that name again. The one that kept floating up like a body that wouldn't stay down. She stepped toward the curtain. The room beyond it buzzed, students, faculty, press. People who still believed institutions corrected themselves if you just pointed out the problem. Mary didn't. She waited for the signal. A hand touched her elbow. Firm, familiar, calm. The man in the suit. "Mrs. Donald," he said softly, "you've made your case." Mary looked at him, really looked this time. "You keep saying that like it's finished," she replied. "It can be," he said, "today, if you want." He slid a folded paper toward her. No logos, no letterhead, a promise, protection. Money enough to quiet a room if you believe rooms are what matter. Mary didn't take it. "You're offering me silence," she said. "Again." He leaned closer, voice barely there. "I'm offering you peace." Mary smiled, slow and sad. "You don't get to offer what you never lost," she said. The signal light turned green. Mary stepped past him without another word. Out on stage, applause rose, polite, expectant. She waited for it to die on its own. "My name is Mary Donald," she said, "and someone just tried to buy this sentence." A ripple moved through the crowd. Mary didn't look back. "They're afraid of what happens when the record finishes," she continued. "Because once it does, this stops being about me." She named the name, out loud, clear. The room inhaled together. Backstage, someone shouted. A door slammed. Security moved late. Mary kept going. "I won't be protected by silence," she said. "I'll be protected by witnesses." Phones rose, cameras clicked. The man in the suit was gone. After they rushed her through corridors and into daylight that felt too bright for what had just broken loose. Sirens somewhere, maybe for traffic, maybe not. Her phone buzzed once. A message, short, final. "You chose the hard ending." Mary typed back as the car pulled away. "There's no other kind." She looked out the window, city sliding past like it always does when something big has already happened. Because now the truth had names, and names don't disappear quietly, but power doesn't either. And as the car merged into traffic, Mary felt it. The moment when a story stops being dangerous to tell and starts being dangerous to survive. The fallout didn't roar, it whispered. That's how you know it's real. Mary stayed off the grid for 48 hours. No appearances, no interviews, just movement and listening. Because when power takes a hit, it doesn't swing wild, it tightens. She watched the coverage from borrowed screens in borrowed rooms. The names she spoke echoed back from anchors, mouths like they didn't quite believe they were allowed to say it. Denials came first, then clarifications. Then a sudden retirement announcement that didn't mention why. Mary clocked it all. That's how systems bleed, slow, internal, pretending it's age. Elaine called near midnight. They're convening something, she said. Closed door emergency. Mary leaned against the window, watching rain smear the city into shadows. Good, she said. That means they're scared of tomorrow. Elaine hesitated. There's something else, she said. A source says they're considering discredit. Mary didn't react. They already tried that, she said. Not like this, Elaine replied. They're digging into your past, anything they can frame. Mary smiled faintly. Let them, she said. I survived their best version. Silence on the line. You're not wrong, Elaine said, but this gets ugly. Mary closed her eyes. Ugly is when truth costs you comfort. It's not when it costs you sleep. Tell the others to stay close, Mary said, and keep copies moving. She hung up and sat down, finally letting the weight settle for a moment. She thought about the girl she was at 14, the one who trusted white coats, the one who didn't know what words like policy and precedent could do to a body. That girl didn't get a choice. Mary did. Her phone buzzed again. One message. No number. No warning this time. We're done waiting. Mary stared at it, heart steady, mind already moving. She typed back one word. Then. 3 dots appeared, paused, disappeared. Outside, a car idled too long at the corner, not close enough to be obvious, not far enough to be coincidence. Mary stood, slipped on her coat, and checked the exit, because when someone says they're done waiting, it means the next move isn't about persuasion. It's about removal. And Mary understood the stakes now better than anyone. If she disappeared, the story would survive. But if she stayed visible, the people who built this thing would have to decide whether killing the witness was worth proving her right. Mary stepped into the hall, door closing softly behind her. The clock was running, and whatever came next was going to tell everyone how far power was willing to go to keep the past buried. The hallway lights flickered once, just once. Mary stopped walking. Buildings don't do that by accident, not the ones with cameras on every corner and budgets that don't ask permission. She listened. No footsteps, no voices. That was worse. She took the stairwell 2 steps at a time, not rushing. Rushing tells on you. At the bottom, the exit door opened onto an alley that smelled like rain and old decisions. Empty, too empty. Her phone buzzed again, a location pin. No message, just coordinates. Mary didn't curse, didn't hesitate, she smiled. Because that meant they wanted to talk, and people only want to talk when they still believe they can control the ending. She sent one reply. Public. 3 dots appeared immediately this time, then vanished. Mary walked. The location led to a park. Wide, open, cameras everywhere, parents during the day, joggers at dusk. Now just enough people to make anything reckless impossible. A bench under a dying streetlight. A man already sitting there, not the suit, older, thicker around the middle. The kind who'd never been on paper but always on the phone. You're late, he said. Mary sat at the other end of the bench, leaving space. Always leave space. You sent the pin, she replied. That's not an invitation. He chuckled once. You're sharper than I expected. Mary looked straight ahead. You underestimated me for 70 years, she said. Why stop now? He sighed. You've done enough, he said. Names are out, files are moving. This doesn't need to keep escalating. Mary tilted her head slightly. Escalation, she said. That's when someone responds, I'm still just talking. The man glanced around the park. You're not untouchable, he said quietly. Mary nodded. I know, she replied. That's why you picked a bench. He frowned. You think this ends with you winning? Mary finally looked at him. I think it ends with the truth not needing me anymore, she said. He studied her. Long, careful. There are people, he said, who will never forgive what you've done. Mary stood. Tell them to get in line, she said. They already took their turn. She walked away without waiting for permission. Behind her, the man stayed seated, because he understood now. Killing her would make martyrs. Silencing her would prove intent. Letting her live meant losing control. And there are moments in every long-running crime where the smartest move is also the one that feels like surrender. Mary reached the end of the path and didn't look back. Tomorrow, subpoenas would land. Testimony would stack. The record would close in ink instead of whispers. But tonight, the danger wasn't gone. It was just thinking. And when danger thinks instead of reacts, that's when you stay alert, because the game wasn't over. It had just moved into a phase where everyone involved knew exactly what losing looked like. Morning didn't bring relief, it brought confirmation. Mary woke to messages stacked like warrants, subpoenas issued, hearings scheduled. Names that had lived in footnotes were suddenly headlines. That's when the tone changed. No more threats, no more warnings, now came favors. A longtime official resigned for personal reasons. A foundation announced funding for historical review. A task force promised transparency with a deadline that kept moving. Mary watched it all with the calm of someone who'd already paid the price. Elaine called mid-morning. They're offering protection, she said, real protection. Mary sat at the table, folder open, coffee untouched. Protection from what? She asked. Elaine didn't answer right away. From what comes next, she finally said. Mary nodded. That meant the machine had accepted one truth. She wasn't going away, and when that happens, power changes tactics. It stops trying to erase you and starts trying to own the story. Mary closed the folder. Tell them thank you, she said, and no. Elaine exhaled. They won't like that. Mary stood, slipping on her coat. They already didn't, she said. I'm still here. That afternoon, Mary walked into a federal building with cameras waiting. Not escorted, not hidden, visible. She didn't rush past the microphones this time. I'm not here for revenge, she said calmly. I'm here for the record. Questions flew, accusations, sympathy dressed as concern. Mary answered none of it, because the real work was happening upstairs, in rooms where the truth had to be written down, not debated. As she passed through security, she felt it. The shift, the danger wasn't in the shadows anymore. It was in the signatures, and signatures last longer than threats. Mary paused at the elevator, surrounded by glass and light. She thought about the girl she'd been, about the women who never made it this far. The doors closed. Somewhere, someone who'd built their life on silence was watching a screen, realizing too late that the safest move they never made was telling the truth first. Because once the record closes, there are no more private endings, only consequences, and Mary was ready to see who survived them. The elevator didn't stop where the button said it would. That's how Mary knew the day wasn't done testing her. It slid past the public floors, past the hum of offices and open doors, and sank lower. Quiet, too quiet. When it opened, there were no cameras, no press. Just a corridor that smelled like old paper and decisions made without witnesses. A man waited at the end. Gray suit, no badge. The kind who never introduces himself because names create records. Mrs. Donald, he said, calm, respectful. You've changed the temperature in this building. Mary stepped out unbothered. Good, she said. It was too comfortable. He gestured down the hall. This way. Mary walked, listening to her own footsteps echo. Echoes tell you how empty a place really is. They entered a room with no windows and a long table already set. Folders stacked neatly. Red tabs, blue tabs, years of people's lives color-coded for convenience. The man sat across from her. "We're not here to threaten you," he said. "That phase is over." Mary leaned back. "Then you're late," she replied. "I already survived it." He allowed himself a thin smile. "We're here to understand how far you intend to take this." Mary folded her hands. "As far as it goes," she said. "I didn't design it, you did." He slid a folder toward her. "Some of what you're exposing," he said carefully, "extends beyond state lines, beyond individual actors." Mary didn't open it. "That's what systems say when they're cornered," she replied. "They pretend the crime is too big to touch." The man studied her for a moment. "You know," he said, "there are ways this ends without you carrying the full weight." Mary met his gaze. "There are ways it ends without the truth," she said. "I'm not interested." Silence settled in, thick, evaluative. Finally, he spoke again. "There will be backlash," he said, "from places you don't see yet." Mary stood. "Then let it come," she said. "I'm done negotiating with ghosts." She walked to the door. No one stopped her. As she stepped back into the light, her phone buzzed. One message, no number. "You were never supposed to get this far." Mary didn't slow. She typed back while walking. "Neither were you." Outside, the city moved like nothing had happened. That's how it always looks right before the ground shifts. Mary slipped the phone into her pocket and disappeared into the crowd. Because now the truth wasn't chasing permission anymore. It was hunting accountability. And somewhere, someone was realizing the final mistake they made wasn't the surgery, wasn't the lie. It was letting one woman live long enough to see the whole board. The backlash didn't come from the streets, it came from paper. Mary learned that before sunset. An injunction filed, temporary, emergency. Language thick with urgency and thin on explanation. They weren't arguing facts anymore. They were arguing timing. Delay is power's last friend. Elaine called, voice tight. "They're trying to freeze testimony," she said. "Claiming national interest, confidential harm." Mary stood at a crosswalk watching the light refuse to change. "Whose harm?" she asked. Elaine didn't answer. She didn't have to. Mary crossed anyway, cars slowing, horns biting the air. You learn something when traffic yields. Movement forces choices. By nightfall, the injunction was granted, partial, narrow, just enough to slow the momentum. Mary read it twice. Then a third time. They'd blocked one path, not all of them. She called the reporter she trusted most, the one who didn't ask for favors. "They're scared of court," Mary said, "so they're hiding behind procedure." "What do you want to do?" he asked. Mary looked at the folder, the copies, the names. "I want to widen the room," she said. "I want witnesses where injunctions can't reach." There was a pause. "You mean Congress," he said. Mary didn't confirm it. She didn't need to. That night another message arrived. Different tone, colder. "You're forcing consequences you can't control." Mary typed back slowly. "Control was your mistake." She packed again. Light, deliberate. The essentials of someone who knows exits matter. Outside, a car idled across the street. Engine on, lights off. Mary watched it for a long moment. It didn't move. She closed the door behind her and took the stairs, not the elevator, because the board was changing again. And when the pieces start clustering around one square, it's because someone is planning a final move. Washington doesn't announce itself. It absorbs you. Mary felt it the moment she stepped off the train. No threats, no shadows, just weight, buildings that don't flinch, people who don't rush, a city built to outlast noise. Elaine met her on the platform. "You're being watched," Elaine said quietly. Mary adjusted her coat. "I've been watched since '48, she replied. "They just didn't think I noticed." They didn't take cars, they walked. Crowds are armor when you know how to wear them. By noon, Mary sat in a waiting room that smelled like old carpet and knew her fear. Outside the door, aides whispered. Phones vibrated. Schedules shifted. Someone was trying to decide whether letting her speak would cost more than stopping her. That's the math power always does. A staffer finally appeared. "This way, Mrs. Donald." The hearing room wasn't grand. That's how they like it when truth shows up uninvited. Long table, microphones, faces trained to reveal nothing. Mary took her seat. No oath this time. They already knew she wasn't lying. A senator leaned forward. "Mrs. Donald," he said, "we appreciate your willingness." Mary raised one hand. "I didn't come for appreciation," she said. "I came because the record is incomplete." The room stilled. She spoke plainly. No flourishes, no drama. She told them about the surgery, the memo, the follow-up report that proved intent. She told them about the letters that came too late, the calls that came too early, the men who believed time would protect them. And then she said the thing they feared most. "This wasn't an abuse of law," Mary said. "It was obedience to it." Penn stopped moving. "You didn't fail to stop this," she continued. "You allowed it." That sentence doesn't accuse individuals. It indicts structures. A woman at the end of the table finally spoke. "What do you want from us?" she asked. Mary didn't hesitate. "I want you to finish the sentence you started in 1927, she said. "I want you to say out loud that the state never had the right to decide who deserves a future." Silence stretched. That's the sound of people realizing they inherited something ugly. And pretending it's too old to fix won't work anymore. When Mary stood to leave, no one stopped her. That mattered. Outside, the sky had gone the color of steel. Elaine touched her arm. "You know what you just did," she said. Mary nodded. "I made it impossible to unhear." Her phone buzzed once. "Final warning, different number. You just signed a lot of enemies." Mary typed back while walking. "They signed themselves decades ago." She slipped the phone away. Behind her, the doors of the building closed with a sound that wasn't final. Just heavy, because now the truth wasn't asking permission. It was waiting for an answer. And somewhere, someone was realizing that killing the witness wouldn't kill the question. It would only make it louder. The answer didn't come as a statement. It came as movement. Mary felt it before she heard about it. The way the air tightens when rooms start closing quietly. Flights delayed. Meetings canceled without explanation. Calls returned by assistants instead of principals. That's when you know the center is bracing. Elaine caught up with her outside a side entrance, breath short, eyes sharp. "They're splitting," Elaine said. "Some want distance, some want denial." Mary didn't slow. "Good," she said. "That means they don't agree." Disagreement is the crack power fears most. By evening, a draft leaked. Not public, not official, but real. Language that didn't apologize, language that corrected. Mary read it once. Then again, it didn't undo the past, but it changed the future. And that's when the phone rang, no ID, no warmth. "You should stop now," the voice said, not angry, not pleading. Final. Mary leaned against the wall, letting people pass like she wasn't standing at the edge of something irreversible. "You already tried stopping me," she replied. "You ran out of ways." A breath on the other end. Controlled, measured. "There are still consequences," the voice said. Mary smiled to herself. "I know," she said. "That's why this matters." The line went dead. That night Mary stayed somewhere she hadn't planned to be. Lights off, curtains open, visibility as protection. Outside, a car passed, then circled. Once, twice. Mary didn't move, because when the endgame arrives, it doesn't always come with violence. Sometimes it comes with a choice. Between letting the truth stand, or proving exactly why it needed to be spoken. And as the car slowed beneath her window, Mary understood one thing with perfect clarity. The story was finished, but the reckoning was just pulling into view. The car didn't stop. That was the tell. It rolled past slow, steady, like someone checking a clock they already owned. Then it turned the corner and disappeared. Mary waited, counted to 60, then another 60. Nothing happened. That's when she knew the pressure had shifted again. Elaine called just after midnight. "It's done," she said. "No build-up, no relief. They're moving forward." Mary sat on the edge of the bed, phone warm in her hand. "With what?" she asked. "A formal repudiation," Elaine said. "Language that kills the old ruling without naming it directly. It'll take time, but the door's closing." Mary closed her eyes, not from victory, from exhaustion. "They didn't do it for me," Mary said. "No," Elaine replied. "They did it because they're afraid of what happens if they don't." Mary nodded. Fear can be useful. It just shouldn't be the only reason. The next morning, headlines softened. Careful optimism. Words like historic and overdue started showing up where silence used to live. Mary didn't read them all, she packed instead. Because stories don't end when the papers say they do. They end when the people who carried them can finally set them down. Before leaving, she checked her phone one last time. One new message. No number, no threat, just 8 words. "You changed the rules, we remember." Mary stared at the screen. Not angry, not scared. Remembered is better than buried. She powered the phone off and placed it on the table face down. A quiet gesture, a final one. Outside, the city woke up like it always does, unaware of how close it came to choosing the wrong ending. Mary stepped into the morning and didn't look back, because some battles don't end with applause. They end with absence. And somewhere in rooms that used to feel untouchable, people were realizing the most dangerous thing they ever allowed was a woman who survived long enough to see the whole board and refused to step off it quietly. The reckoning hadn't finished. It had just lost its favorite hiding place. ChatGPT can make mistakes. Mary didn't disappear, she became inconvenient. That's worse. She took no victory lap, no speeches, no book deal lined up behind a smile. She went quiet on purpose. Quiet isn't retreat when everyone's watching. Quiet is leverage. Weeks passed, then months. Committees argued in circles. Courts moved slow like they always do when the truth costs money. Language got sharpened, softened, rewritten. But something had shifted underneath it all. Files that used to be sealed weren't. Emails that were lost surfaced. People who never returned calls suddenly did. Mary watched from a distance. She didn't push anymore, she let gravity work. Because once a structure admits it was wrong, even halfway, it starts collapsing under its own weight. Elaine called one afternoon, voice lighter than it had been in years. "They're naming it now," she said. "Not history. Not context, harm." Mary smiled faintly. "That word sticks," she said. "It's not over," Elaine added. Mary looked out at a street where nobody knew her name. "It never is," she replied. "It just changes hands." That night, Mary sat alone with the folder one last time. Not reading. Just acknowledging. She didn't burn it, didn't hide it. She donated it, placed it where it couldn't be buried again. Because power can wait out anger. It can survive outrage. What it can't survive is memory that doesn't need permission. Mary walked away from the building without ceremony. No one followed. No car idled too long. The game was done with her. And somewhere a new problem was forming for the people who thought this ended with one woman, because the quiet ones were watching now, learning, counting. And they'd seen what happens when someone refuses to stay small. Mary Donald never got the life she was promised, but she took something else instead: control of the ending. And in this city, in this country, in any system built on silence, that's the most dangerous thing a survivor can ever claim. The phone rang after midnight. That alone meant something. Mary hadn't given this number to anyone new. It was old, quiet. A line meant for emergencies that never came. She answered without speaking, a breath on the other end, slow, familiar in tone, not in voice. "They're reopening files," the caller said. "More than you know." Mary sat up. "How many?" she asked. Another pause, longer this time. Enough to scare people who thought they were done being careful. Mary looked at the dark window, her reflection barely there. "That's not why you called," she said. The caller exhaled. "No," he admitted. "I called because someone's trying to close them again." What? Mary felt the shift immediately. Not fear, focus. "Who?" she asked. "I can't say yet," he replied. "But it's not the old guard." That mattered. Old power breaks loud. New power breaks quiet. "They're using different language," he continued. "Talking about stability, unity, moving on." Mary smiled to herself. "Same move," she said. "New mouth." "Silence, you should be careful," the caller added. "This next part won't look like pressure." Mary leaned back, voice calm. "It never does when it matters," she said. The line went dead. Mary didn't call back. She stood, crossed the room, and opened the drawer she hadn't touched in weeks. Inside was nothing dramatic, just notes, names, connections that hadn't mattered yet, until now. She understood something then, clearer than ever. The fight wasn't about the past anymore. It was about who gets to decide when accountability expires. Mary closed the drawer and turned off the light. Outside, the city slept like it always does when danger is thinking instead of acting, because the truth had survived exposure. Now it had to survive succession. And somewhere, someone younger, cleaner, and far more patient was deciding whether letting Mary stay alive and visible was a risk or an example. The board was still there, the pieces had changed, and the game, the real one, wasn't finished yet. Mary didn't answer the next call. She watched it ring out, screen lighting the ceiling like a warning flare. Same number pattern, different line. That meant coordination. She rolled onto her side and waited for the follow-up. It came right on time, a message, no greeting. Meeting moved, not on record. Mary read it once. Then she laughed, quiet, controlled, the kind of laugh you earn when you finally understand the play. Off the record is where stories go to die. She typed back 2 words. Send details. The reply came fast, too fast. Tomorrow noon, private office. Mary didn't ask where. People offering secrecy always want you to ask. Instead, she opened the notebook she'd stopped adding to weeks ago. The one with names that hadn't mattered yet. She circled one. Young, clean resume, public language about reform. Private connections nobody liked to say out loud. Succession. That's how systems survive scandal. They swap faces and keep the bones. Mary closed the notebook and stood. No panic, no rush. She packed light again. Not because she planned to run, because she planned to be flexible. At dawn, she walked the long way to nowhere in particular, changed routes twice, watched reflections instead of faces. At a crosswalk, a man bumped her shoulder hard enough to be noticed, soft enough to look accidental. "Sorry," he said, already moving. Mary checked her coat pocket. Her phone was still there, her notebook was. That made it real. She didn't turn around. Pickpockets steal wallets. Operatives steal maps. Mary kept walking, mind already reconstructing what she'd lost and what it told her. They weren't trying to scare her now. They were trying to learn how she thought. That meant the next meeting wasn't about compromise. It was about assessment. Who she still talked to. What she still knew, how far she could go without proof. Mary reached a corner cafe and sat where the windows faced the street, ordered nothing. She pulled out a pen and wrote 3 names on a napkin. People who would notice the notebook missing before she did. Then she tore the napkin in half and left it on the table. When she stepped back outside, her phone buzzed again. New message. Change of plans, same outcome. Mary stopped walking. Same outcome. That's what you say when you believe the ending's already written. She typed 1 sentence before slipping the phone away. Only if you're still holding the pen. Across the street, a car idled. Engine on. Driver watching his mirrors too much. Mary crossed without waiting for the light. The car didn't follow, not yet. Because whoever was running this phase of the game wasn't interested in threats anymore. They were deciding whether Mary Donald was a liability or a variable they hadn't solved. And until that decision landed, the most dangerous moment wasn't the meeting tomorrow. It was the space between now and then, when everyone involved knew the wrong move would finally show who this system was willing to sacrifice next. Part 26. Mary didn't go to the meeting. That was the move they didn't budget for. At noon, the private office stayed empty. Lights on, coffee cooling, a room prepared for control that never got to use it. Instead, Mary sat on a park bench 2 miles away, feeding crumbs to pigeons like she didn't have a care left to lose. Visibility as camouflage. Her phone stayed off. When people expect you to negotiate, absence becomes a message. Across the city, calls stacked up. Assistants stalled, explanations frayed. By 2 o'clock, the tone changed. Not urgent anymore, curious. That's when Mary knew she'd stepped outside their script. She turned the phone back on, 3 missed calls, 1 voicemail. A different voice this time, younger, controlled, trying hard to sound reasonable. "Mrs. Donald," it said, "we may have started on the wrong foot." Mary deleted it. You don't restart a conversation that was designed to end you. She stood, brushed crumbs from her coat, and walked toward a public library with glass walls and too many witnesses. Inside, she requested one thing: a computer. No login, no trail. She typed slowly, deliberately, an open letter, short, surgical. Not accusations, timelines, not outrage, proof of sequence. She hit publish and closed the browser. By the time she stepped back outside, the first notifications were already spreading. People love secrets until they're shared plainly. Her phone buzzed again. A text this time. "We can still control this." Mary replied without stopping. "No, you can only respond." That's the line where power realizes the table flipped. She felt it in the way the city moved around her. The hurried steps, the phones lifted to ears, the sudden attention to things that used to be ignored. Somewhere the notebook reappeared, not returned, referenced. A source sent her a photo of a scanned page, one of her notes, with highlights added. They weren't stealing anymore, they were studying. Mary smiled. Because studying means you're behind. She turned down a side street and disappeared into the afternoon crowd, pulse steady, mind clear. The decision about her still hadn't been made, but the window was closing, and soon whoever was in charge would have to choose. Make her part of the story, or prove once and for all that everything she said about this system was true. Mary never took another meeting. She didn't need to. The letter came instead, plain envelope. No seal, no threats. Inside was a single page, no denial, no apology, just confirmation that the records were being permanently opened, archived, and transferred out of private control. Names attached, dates locked, language finalized. The kind of paperwork that doesn't make noise but never goes away. Mary read it once, then folded it neatly. Outside, the city kept moving. Cars, voices, ordinary life pretending it hadn't just brushed past something dangerous. She understood the truth then. They hadn't spared her out of mercy. They spared her because removing her would have proven everything. Power didn't lose, it retreated, and retreat was enough. Mary placed the letter in the same folder that once held lies and sealed it shut. Not to hide it, to finish it. She didn't give interviews. Didn't wait for monuments. Didn't ask for gratitude. She simply lived the rest of her life knowing one thing the system never wanted her to know. They saw her, they feared her, and they blinked first. Some crimes end with arrests. Others end when the truth becomes too permanent to erase. Mary Donald didn't get justice the way movies promise. She got something quieter. She got the last move, and the people who thought they owned the board never touched it the same way again.